Joining me on the News Hour tonight is Neal Katyal, lawyer and former Principal Deputy Solicitor General of the United States, a man who scripted history with a victory of the big tariff row in the Supreme Court in the United States. Thank you very much for joining me, Neal Katyal. What a victory that was. It is really a time when the world is confused about this entire tariff affair. How do you look at the entire victory, the principles of law that really stood out against the move that President Trump had made?
Well, first of all, I just want to thank you for having me on. I'm a big fan of the network. I was just in India last year and saw it. So my parents are Punjabi, so it's a real privilege to be on with you. I think of the case as a victory, not for me or for my legal team or for even my clients. I think of it as a victory for the idea of the rule of law. That our founders of the American government over 200 years ago wrote a constitution that separated powers, and there were some things that the president could do and some things that Congress could do, and it had the courts police that line. And what the president tried to do was to say, I get to do whatever I want, and I get to have these tariffs, even though our framers in the Constitution said the power to tariff is only given to Congress. Indeed, it's the very first power that the founders gave to Congress, the power to impose tariffs. So the idea that the president could do it was always suspect. At the same time, I've argued a lot of big Supreme Court cases. My first case shut down Guantanamo. And so, I'm used to these big cases, but they're very hard to win against a president. And, the Supreme Court generally likes to defer and let what a president says he needs, let that go. And so it's always a challenge. At the same time, I felt like my legal team and I were up to the challenge, and yesterday we saw 6 of the 9 justices, and you only need 5, but we got 6 to say that President Trump's tariffs were totally unconstitutional.
So let me ask you, 2 things stand out in the judgment: that the IEEPA did not give President Trump the powers to impose tariff, and second, any such decision would have required congressional approval that was not sought at all. So was this bad legal advice? Was this overlooking what the Constitution said? Where do you think this came from?
Yeah, certainly the latter. It was overlooking what the Constitution said. President Trump actually got it right in his first term in office. Back in 2018 or so, he wanted to impose tariffs, and he went to Congress and said, Congress, I want to impose tariffs. Please give me a law so I can do that. And Congress said, no, we don't think we want to do that. We think they're dangerous and destructive, so we're not doing that. So this time around, when he became president, he didn't even bother to ask Congress. He just did it on his own. And you've all seen the flip-flopping and the tariffs, particularly with India, but other countries too. They're, super high percentage one day, they're low the next, and, it's all done as a matter of whim and whimsy. So, what the president said is, you're right, the first part of your question, he said, well, there's a 1977 emergency law, and that allows me the power to impose tariffs. There's only one problem with that argument. The word tariff is nowhere in there, nothing even close in that 1977 law. And the Supreme Court yesterday, in an opinion by our Chief Justice, agreed with us and said that 1977 law is not about tariffs. And, interestingly, the Chief Justice is no Democrat, liberal person. He was put on the court by President George W. Bush. And his opinion was joined by 2 justices, Neil Gorsuch and Amy Coney Barrett, who were appointed to the Supreme Court by Donald Trump. So this is not some kind of left-wing decision or some anti-Trump thing. This is literally just what the rule of law is about. And I firmly believe in my heart that had this been President Biden's tariffs or President Obama's tariffs or something like President Clinton's, we would have the exact same results as we had yesterday.
So tell me, first, after the Supreme Court verdict, he said 10% tariffs on the entire world under the special Section 122, and now in 24 hours that's gone up to 15%. Just what's going on?
I can't speculate as to what's going on. I can tell you that he's now asserting the power to use, as you say, Section 122, which does mention tariffs, and it allows a president the ability to go up to 15%, but only for 150 days, but only in response to balance of payments problems. And the problem he has is that his own lawyers, in my case, and I have a tweet on this, or X, or whatever you call it, that his own lawyers in my case actually said that Section 122 can't be used. So they've kind of forfeited that argument. So I think they're going to have a lot of trouble in using Section 122 to try and impose tariffs. And look, I'm not opposed to tariffs. Like, if he can go to the Congress and persuade them to say, we need these tariffs at whatever level, 15%, whatever, 10, 8, whatever, that's one thing. That's the American way. That's what our Constitution requires. But he can't just do it on his own.
You have tweeted about the position taken by his legal team on 122. Are you going to challenge that as well? Because you say that's applicable on balance of payments and not trade deficits per se.
We'll see. We're looking into it. I want to see what the president actually does as opposed to what he says he might do in a tweet.
Okay, so let me also ask you the fact that there is a debate that has been reignited on the separation of powers. The Supreme Court may have struck down what is a case of executive overreach, but where do you think this is going to go from here?
Well, I think that America and India too have written constitutions. They're constitutional democracies. And one of the great things about them is that you do have court systems to say when leaders make mistakes. And I was very glad to see our Supreme Court yesterday say our leader made a mistake, and to say you can't do that in our system. And if the president continues down his path of illegal action, I suspect the Supreme Court will come and say, again, you can't do that in our system.
Would you really expand on the fact that Justices Neal Gorsuch and Amy Barrett, both appointed by President Trump, also ruled against him? What does this mean, for the conservative lobby, if you may want to call it that, all of them going against Trump?
Yeah, I mean, for me, like when I think what is the rule of law, it's just the simple idea that it doesn't matter who the particular party is, the same rules apply. So whether you're rich or poor, man or woman, Indian or American, it doesn't matter. You get the same rules, Democrat or Republican. And I think what we saw yesterday is the justices taking that principle really seriously and not sitting there. And, it must be an awesome thing to be nominated to the Supreme Court. And you've got to be loyal to the president in a way who put you there. I mean, you've got to be grateful. But that grateful and loyalty can't mean that you compromise your role as a judge and do something just because you're grateful to the person. And that's our proud American tradition. And you've seen justices nominated by all sorts of presidents that just follow that basic idea. And that's what happened yesterday. And we shouldn't expect anything else. If I were president and I nominated 8 people, 9 people to the Supreme Court, I'd actually hope they vote against me if I did something illegal and unconstitutional. That's what the system is all about.
So what happens to all the tariffs that have been charged so far? If this was bad in law, as the judgment now says, will there be refunds? How does this work out? Countries that have signed trade deals, for example, India, what happens to those trade agreements? Could you shed some light on that?
Yeah, I put together a task force with a lot of our top lawyers to really get into that question. And, we believe that the refunds are going to have to be given. Indeed, the government in our case, the one we won in the Supreme Court, the Trump administration already agreed that they'd have to give refunds back in our case, plus interest. And we suspect that will be true in other cases. And so, we have for big clients, we are going in and being ready to go into court and get those refunds, and we think we will get them.
But President Trump says, he really has a MAGA lobby that he has to please before the midterm polls, and he's been doing this to make America great again. How do you think this is going to pan out?
I don't do politics, I just do law, but I mean, if he's so convinced that tariffs are a good idea, he has an easy thing to do under our Constitution, go to Congress and say, hey, I need the tariffs. Indeed, on Tuesday, he's going to be giving his State of the Union address. So if he really believes it, go and persuade Congress.
So let me ask you, you've been representing a coalition of businesses and trade groups in challenging Trump's tariffs. How has this impacted businesses overall in America and, of course, trade with other countries?
Yeah, it's been horrific for these small businesses and for large businesses too, like our car manufacturers and the like. I mean, what's happened is you've had a massive increase in prices, meaning that people can't afford the things that they used to be able to afford, and so they don't buy them. And that's put a lot of these companies on the brink of bankruptcy or pushed them into bankruptcy. And again, maybe the tariffs are justified because there's other needs that outweigh what's happening to these small businesses, but that's exactly the kind of thing Congress is supposed to evaluate.
Do you think these 10% or 15% tariffs announced now will continue for 150 days?
I suspect they're going to be challenged very quickly.
Okay, so round two coming up soon. Neal Katyal, you earlier said you traveled to India. Your parents are Punjabi, happy to be a Punjabi as well. How often do you travel to India? And you said your parents are Punjabi. Do you
Yes.
speak any Punjabi yourself?
No, my parents came and I was born in America and they were told that I would get confused if they taught me Hindi or Punjabi. So I'm very upset. I tried at one point to learn when I was, a teenager. It was very hard. I'm not very good at languages. I'm not even good at English. So it didn't go too well. But I love India. I love being back, and I love seeing my family. I'm sure I will be there in short order.
What do you really love about India? The food, just Bollywood or music or what?
Not Bollywood, but the food and music is great. But most of all, I just love my family, and I love I love the fact that I live in one of the two great constitutional democracies of the world.
Well, you said, and I just want to compliment you. You may not be very good at languages, but so long as you know your law and interpret the Constitution, well, kudos to you for this victory. Uh, Anything that you take away as a learning from this particular battle, because you've done some very high-profile cases, uh, this legal battle, what do you take away from this one?
I think the thing I want to leave you with is that it took a lot of bravery for these small businesses to do this. A bunch of the biggest companies in America had asked me to file a lawsuit at the beginning of the Trump administration, and then they all got scared. They were too worried about what would happen if they filed those lawsuits. And it was these small, brave companies that stood up for our Constitution. And I've seen that time and time again in our constitutional history. It takes ordinary people just standing up and saying, this is what our Constitution's about.
Well, yes, it is. It is Constitution that is just so important in democracies like yours in America, like ours here in India. Thank you very much. What a proud
Thank
moment
you.
for you and your parents. We're waiting for round two of the legal action. Has anybody approached you yet for a lawsuit?
At least 1,000 people. Yes. So we will see. Time will tell.
All right. So, Neal Katyal, getting ready for round two, sharpening his claws and his legal acumen and arguments. Thank you very much for joining me here
Thank
on
you.
Times Now on the News Hour tonight.
Thank you so much.